Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, SKOCH India Law Forum is the platform that deliberates and returns actionable recommendations on the burning issues of its time. One such issue is online gaming. SKOCH Group has organized several national consultations on online gaming or gambling in the last 2 years. The larger picture is that gambling has deep cultural and social roots in India, and the gaming industry sees this as an opportunity. Numerous examples from the past should guide policymakers, and gambling in all its manifestation, including the online gaming industry, needs regulation. To talk more about, we have a panel discussion here on this topic. Is gaming dice loaded? And to begin with, may I please invite our moderator for this panel discussion, Mr. Samir Kochar, Chairman SKOCH, on the dais. Sir, I welcome you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have Dr. Ashwini Mahajan, National Co-Convener, Swadeshi Jagran Manch with us. I request Dr. Ashwini Mahajan to kindly join us on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he is an author and also work as a researcher and activist on the World Trade Organization, WTO, and other international trade agreements. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have Dr. Pinky Anand with us, Senior Advocate and former Additional Solicitor General. A trustee of the Art and Cultural Heritage Trust, is a designated Senior Advocate at the Supreme Court of India. A Doctorate of Law, graduate of Harvard Law School, an Inlac Scholar and Honorary Professor at MIT Law School. She is the second woman in India to have been awarded this high constitutional law office. Ma'am, we welcome you on the stage. We also have Mr. Rakesh Asthana, former Police Commissioner of Delhi with us. Sir, we welcome you. Jai Hind. He is an Indian Police Service officer who served as the Special Director at the Central Bureau of Investigation and was appointed as Police Commissioner of Delhi. A man who had also examined famous case of Asaram Babu and his son Narayan Sai. Sir, I welcome you. Thank you so much for joining. We also have, last but not the least, Ms. Tanisha Khanna, Co-Head Gaming Practice Group, Nishit Desai Associate. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. She has advised clients across various industries, including IP, media and entertainment, gaming and general commercial laws. She was recognized by WHO as a recommended lawyer for gaming in 2022 and 21. Thank you, everyone. And now I request to kindly begin with the panel discussion.
Well, thank you very much for this very important session that we have this afternoon. Is the gaming dice loaded, and I think that has been at the center of attention. But let me tell you that why is it important to have this discussion? I think since this morning we've talked about a lot of grace, a lot of gentlemanly or gentlewomanly spirit, etc., that have been hallmark of Indian legal system or policy debate over the years, and they remain as a bedrock of the same. So there is a particular grammar and a vocabulary of public policy that this country is used to following, and this cowboy style American way of lobbying is very new to us, you know. So what happens is that industries who are perceived to be in a bad neighborhood, you know, like the crypto or gaming or gambling, etc. So they are in any case in Indian psyche coming from a bad neighborhood. On top of that, they pick up paid media who start singing in unison that this evil is actually very good for the country, and drown out all voices of difference of opinion that may exist. And these areas being very new, there is clearly a lack of state capacity on understanding on issues that are really involved. Historically, that role has been played by independent think tanks, academia, and civil society. But in this new games of, let's say, cowboys, they have no space left and they have no funding left also to do research and talk about these areas that are extremely important to policy making in India. It is not a question of who is for gaming or who's against it. It is a question of, has the policy been made after hearing all the point of views that exist. Also, there is, for the first time, that we are discussing the difference between gaming and gambling. I am a simple person, not very much educated, but both the acts are acts of betting. So if you say that, my betting is more skilled and his betting is more chanced, so are we going to make a law on the process? Well, you can have a patent on the process, but how can you have a law on that? Or are you going to tax the process? Or are you going to tax the business, which is betting? So this is why this session is extremely important. And I think one of the lessons learned by the gaming industry is that when you behave like a bull in the china shop, what you get is 28% on face value. Had they, given a breathing space and had a wider public debate, possibly the view would not have been that harsh. So having said that, let me get the ball rolling with the biggest excuse that they gave, whether it is crypto, whether it is gaming. That excuse is that the state lacks policing ability. Since India cannot police gambling, India cannot police crypto, and all of these guys are going to go to, friendlier regulations and shores. Therefore, we should legalize them. We should legalize drugs too. What do you say, Mr. Asthana? Do you think we have zero policing capability on digital sin industries?
I disagree with you. We have got tremendous capability of investigating any cyber crime, and gaming, online gaming or gambling, if it is a game by chance and if it is the money is involved and a crime is committed, it is a cyber crime. And we are fully competent, even all the police forces, central agencies, specialized agencies in the state police, they are fully equipped to investigate the case. The only problem lies is what sections should be applied to. The lawyer is here. My perspective, we have only the State Gambling Acts or Public Gambling Act of 1867, Government of India. I feel that since online gambling or gaming, whatever you say, if it is a crime, suitable amendment in the Public Gambling Act of 1867 should be made, so that there is some deterrence. Otherwise, deterrence is not there. Mostly police take the cases as of 420 and investigate. And it takes a lot of time then. So this is my view on
Okay,
that.
so your perspective is that there is no lack of policing capability, there is lack of law. And
The law is there, but some deterrent law is
not
required.
there.
Yeah.
so that brings me to Ashwini Mahajan. So Ashwini Mahajan ji, ये जो इंडस्ट्री है, गेमिंग वाली है, क्रिप्टो वाली है, कुछ रिलेटेड सी इंडस्ट्री है, ये लोग तो लॉ को भी अपोज करते हैं। ये कहते हैं कि रेगुलेशन होना ही नहीं चाहिए, हम खुद ही सेल्फ रेगुलेट कर लेंगे, हम खुद ही फैसला कर लेंगे कि ये सही है कि ये गलत है, इस पे कितना टैक्स लगना चाहिए, कौन सा गेम जुआ है, कौन सा लूडो जुआ नहीं है, चाहे उस पर पैसा लगा के आपके लिए। आपका क्या मानना है कि रेगुलेशन की प्रॉब्लम है, लॉ की प्रॉब्लम है, क्या प्रॉब्लम है ये?
यहाँ समस्या इस बात की है समीर जी कि ये एक नई टेक्नोलॉजी है। उस नई टेक्नोलॉजी में कोई भी नई चीज़ आती है तो उसमें रेगुलेट करने में समय लगता है। पिंकी जी बैठे हैं कि जब अगर हिस्ट्री ऑफ लॉ पढ़ेंगे तो किसी एक कानून को बनाने में सदियां लग जाती हैं, किसी एक विषय को लेकर के। तो हम समझें कि इस तेज़ चलते हुए युग में हम मिनटों में, आज आपने कुछ चीज़ ईजाद की, गेमिंग, चाहे वो गेम ऑफ चांस है, चाहे वो गेम ऑफ स्किल है, उसके बारे में हम अभी हमारे सामने लीगल एक्सपर्ट्स बैठे हैं, तो आप भी जानते हैं कि इतना आसान नहीं होता किसी के बारे में कानून बना देना। इसीलिए इसका फ़ायदा उठाते हुए कई बार, मैं इनको गलत नहीं मानता हूँ, लेकिन जो कंपनियाँ इस काम में संलग्न हैं वो इसका फ़ायदा उठाते हुए कि रेगुलेशन कैसे होने चाहिए, हम भी स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं, हमसे भी पूछिए, ये भी बात आती है। इन लोगों ने बड़ी चतुराई से, मैं माफ़ कीजिएगा, मैं इस विषय को बड़ा उस तरीके से, आप जानते हैं कि हम तो बड़ी चतुराई से जीएसटी का कोई इशू था, किसी हाई कोर्ट में उस विषय पर बातचीत चल रही थी, तो उसमें इसको गेम ऑफ स्किल और गेम ऑफ चांस की वोकैबुलरी में जोड़ दिया और वहाँ से शुरुआत हुई कि ये तो गेम ऑफ स्किल्स हैं, तो इसलिए इनको गैम्बलिंग नहीं माना जा सकता, इसलिए इन पर रोक नहीं लगाई जा सकती, रिस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं लगाई जा सकती। ये बात हमने भी बहुत दिनों से समझने का प्रयास किया, तो हमने सरकार से ये कहा कि देखिए, आपके बस में नहीं है कि आप इस गेम ऑफ स्किल और गेम ऑफ चांस को ठीक प्रकार से डिफाइन कर सकें, क्योंकि ये बड़े चतुर लोगों का खेल है। तो आप क्यों ना इसमें एक कैप लगा दीजिए, क्योंकि मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा परेशान करती है, दुखी करती है, वो है कि मेरे युवा 50 रुपये की स्टेक लगाते हैं, फिर 100 रुपये की स्टेक लगाते हैं, फिर 1000 रुपये की स्टेक लगाते हैं, फिर 10,000 रुपये की स्टेक लगाते हैं। वो जो जिसको हम कहें कि एक प्रकार का नशा है, उसके कारण एक लत जो पड़ती है, उसके कारण आप उन माँ बाप से पूछिए जिनके बच्चे 2-2 दिन कमरे से बाहर नहीं निकलते हैं इस लत के कारण। तो इस कारण से हमने सरकार को सुझाव दिया, अश्विनी वैष्णव जी को भी कहा, राजीव चंद्रशेखर को भी कहा, और भी लोगों को बताया कि आप इस पर कैप लगाइए 50 या 100 रुपये का, सब समाधान हो जाएगा। इस बात पे चूँकि नए कानून, नए नियम बन रहे हैं, इस पर भी विचार चल रहा है, लेकिन इसके मैं बधाई देना चाहता हूँ जीएसटी काउंसिल को और उसके प्रमुख के नाते भारत की वित्त मंत्री को, कि उन्होंने एक नायाब तरीका इसका इजाद किया कि उस पर जीएसटी। अब आप ये देखिए, मैं थोड़ा ज़्यादा समय ले रहा हूँ, लेकिन थोड़ा आपको उसका संदर्भ बताना चाहता हूँ। हम सिगरेट, बीड़ी, शराब, तो इस पर हम अभी WHO की एक कमेटी बनी, उन्होंने कहा कि इसको बंद करना चाहिए और इसके लिए जीएसटी जो 28% लगता है उसके ऊपर भी टैक्स लगना चाहिए, और इस बार सिगरेट पर टैक्स लगाया गया ज़्यादा। यानी किसी भी जो ऐसी अनवांटेड डीमेरिट गुड है, मैं इकोनॉमिक्स का विद्यार्थी हूँ, हम डीमेरिट गुड्स के बारे में बात करते हैं, तो डीमेरिट गुड्स पर हायर जीएसटी लगना चाहिए, ये सब लोगों को मान्य है। तो बड़ी मज़ेदार बात यह है कि अब जो ये गेम्स जो थी वो 2-3-4-5% पर निपट जाती थी, और मुझे दही खरीदना है बाज़ार से, तो उस पर भी 5% जीएसटी लगता है, जो मेरे लिए बहुत एसेंशियल है, उस पर भी 5% जीएसटी लगता है। ये 2-3-4% पर निपट जाते थे। 28% जीएसटी लगाना ये एक बहुत क्योंकि ये नहीं कर पाएंगे अभी 2-4 साल, पिंकी जी यहाँ पर हैं, इसको कानून में बांध लेना बड़ा आसान नहीं होगा। इसलिए जब तक इसके बारे में कानून नहीं बनता, हायर जीएसटी लगाना, हमने इसके बारे में पहले भी देखा है, जैसे क्रिप्टोज में हमारे युवा फंस रहे थे, उस पर हमने टैक्स लगा करके, टैक्स के माध्यम से क्रिप्टोज की जिसको एट्रैक्शन है या लस्ट है या वो कम की है। उसी तरह से गेमिंग, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि गेमिंग बंद कर दें, खिलाते रहिए गेमिंग। लेकिन मेरे मेरे बच्चे को 50 से 100 रुपये से ज़्यादा बेट लगाने की अनुमति नहीं होनी चाहिए।
Dhanyawad, Ashwini ji. That brings me to the lawyer on the panel, Pinky ji. You know, it is such a confusing subject that there is even a discussion on whose order of business is gaming or gambling in the central government. And is it a central government issue at all, or is it a state government issue? So if you could throw some light on that.
Sameer ji, I want to actually start with something that Ashwini ji has spoken about and what Rakesh also did, and I'll come to the subject of the order of day, though that is in its own way clear. The center is responsible for gambling. Gambling comes under the category of and the jurisdiction of the center, and where technology is concerned, gambling is state subject and technology is center subject. These points are clear, but the problem is when you have a new concept of online gaming. And so far, incidentally, when we didn't have online gaming, some states have imposed bans on gambling. What has happened is, and gambling is also prohibited under the Public Gambling Act, as far as the gambling houses are concerned. So, when physical tha, it was clear. It's banned, and basically because of that, you couldn't carry out the activity. Aside from some states which permitted, for example, Goa, etc., where it carries on. Now, with online gaming, the problems have arisen. And that is where, whether it lies within gambling or whether it lies within technology, this is one of the jurisdictional issues as to who should prevail. But generally, the idea has been that this should come, as gambling should be, it should be within the state subject, and state should decide, because it's a policy issue. Should you allow it, should you not allow it? And therefore, technology, whether technology will prevail or gambling, incidentally, you'll see this in the courts. Whenever this issue comes up into law, whether by way of GST or otherwise, these will be tested through that medium, should it be the center or state. But coming back to what Rakesh ji and Ashwini ji had spoken, and I appreciate one aspect of what Ashwini said. What you can't do sometimes directly, you can do indirectly. And GST amendment, the proposed amendment of 28%, levying a prohibitive GST or a heavy GST or an excessive GST, incidentally other countries have imposed somewhat lesser, and the average rate might be somewhere around 15% GST for other countries for such a subject. Here we've gone up to 28%. So it's a good medium to actually find and restrict this activity by making it difficult. How do you make it difficult? You put taxes on it, you put taxes on smoking, so you reduce smoking, and it has shown an overall effect. Similarly on gambling, if you do that, because the distinction between game of skill and game of chance is also a very complicated one, and all of us know actually today. Everybody in the staff, whether we are ourselves doing it or not, but all the youngsters and the staff are engaging in this activity morning, day and night, and this cannot be good. So the cap idea that Ashwini ji said is another way. Aap GST high kar lijiye, put a cap and an imposition. You can't allow our time. Time is money today. So that itself is a component of money. And the second part, money by itself. That itself is also there. So you can't allow youngsters to fritter away their monies in time as well as actual money in these kind of activities, and taking away from actual persistence in doing an activity which brings in an asset and a capital to the country or the economy. I am also a student of economics, by the way. So I do believe that we as citizens contribute. Activity cannot be put in that category which really contributes. इसमें होता क्या है ultimately revenue ज़रूर. You are actually having the next subject here is companies actually which are coming up are making money. It is a method of generating money and revenue for the government also. So by imposing a higher GST, yes, government also gets more revenue. It also prohibits or limits, not prohibits, it limits the activity to some extent, also limits the activities of the youngsters and other people who are engaging in this activity, which takes you nowhere. And lastly, regulation regime. The regulation regime actually today is not in place. There are some guidelines, but that is something we really need to think about. Put in more regulations. Every activity, there is, in law we have a very simple concept. Sometimes you can ban, sometimes you can't ban. It is in violation of 19(1)(g), Article 19(1)(g), which is the right to carry on business. So that distinction is drawn, games of chance, games of skill. So games of skill should not be banned, games of chance may be banned. That is a broad argument that is used across the surface. But in the meantime, what we definitely need to do, whether we ban or we don't ban, we must consider what has to be done for regulation. So capping is one of the regulatory mechanisms, accountability, registration, But the problem area, and Rakesh ji will support me there, in the cyber world, today you do something in India. How do you ban outside applications? America says some application generated. You close one application, another application will start somewhere. So, the base of that jurisdiction is outside. The cyber crime, if committed, yes, it is valid here, but they don't have a base here. So, there are some genuine difficulties which you are going to face. But I am conscious of one fact, and this is my thought, that we must regulate at the minimum. We must regulate at the minimum, and we must tax at the minimum.
Wonderful thought. So, Rakesh ji, to your mind, what could be an effective tax already discussed? And before I come to Tanisha, what could be a good regulatory mechanism? Because there is an argument for self-regulation.
There are two aspects of it. One is a penal aspect, which we have already discussed. Second, if it is a business and you are generating revenue, then you must pay tax, whether it is income tax or good services tax. What should be the rate? It should be decided by the government. Why this high percentage of tax? I like to submit because these online gaming activities have been affecting the social fabric of the country, mostly the children and youngsters. It is between 15 to 35 years of age group, which are mostly addicted to it. So this is, as Mr. Mahajan has said, it is a deterrent effect. Now, the self-regulatory aspect which is being provided by this new amendment in the rules, that is the best thing to happen, because if government interferes more, that will be deterrent for the economic activities. We will have to accept that lot of money is generated through this business. As per the projection, by 2025, it will go up to almost 290 billion rupees of business through this. There's a lot of money. The economy is affected. But at the same time, the dangers are also there. The money laundering is there. The social problems are there. So one has to balance it out. And the best thing is that if government is coming up with high percentage of taxes or some rules and regulations, the businesses which are coming up on the online through this gaming, they should also have some sort of self-regulation. So a balance is required.
Balance is required. So coming to you, Tanisha, the view largely of the panelists is we don't like the industry, but we like the money. So pay us punitive level of taxes and carry on with whatever you're doing. At the same time, industry of course is protesting that's too high a level of tax, and there will be employment laws, there will be business this thing. And what absolutely intrigues me is the high rate of tax is applicable from the 1st of October. But we started sacking people in July and August. So, I mean, how do you balance that out? And do you think, is there a case for reviewing the rate of GST, and if so, why?
Sure. So, thanks for your question. I think before I answer your specific question, just a couple of comments on what everyone has said. See, I think we don't like the distinction between games of skill and games of chance. I hear everyone. But we can't run away from the fact now that games of skill are a constitutionally protected activity. There's been a Supreme Court judgment as far back as 1957 which has recognized that there is a constitutional right under 19(1)(g) to offer games of skill. In the past 1.5 years, we've seen 3 High Court judgments from Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, which have upheld that there is a constitutional right to offer and play games of skill. So we are past the point where we can completely ban this activity even under the constitution, right? The High Courts have struck down these bans as unconstitutional. Though they have recognized that there can be some controls on the skill gaming activity, and I don't even think the industry is quarreling with the fact that there should be some controls. Now, in terms of the actual controls, right, I heard some conversation about self-regulatory. So actually what has been introduced is a co-regulatory mechanism, not a self-regulatory mechanism, with oversight of MeitY, which has been given charge over the online gaming industry. MeitY has the power to block gaming apps which don't conform to the law. They have power to revoke the verification of online games that are not appropriately verified and vetted by the self-regulatory body. They can suspend the self-regulatory body's designation if they are not conforming to the requirements IT rules. So there is a oversight by the government. It's not a completely self-regulated industry, it's co-regulatory. Now on your question on tax, right? I think the discussion has been on the high rate of tax or a lesser rate of tax. But what I want to talk about is, again, we always go back to what our courts have said. And I think the courts have recognized that there has to be a nexus between the assessable value and the taxable activity, right? Let's understand how these platforms work. How it works is the players have a buy-in amount, okay, which is the money that they play with against other players on the platform, out of which the platform will take a 10% service fee amount, right? That is relatable to the service of the making the platform available. There is no service provided in terms of the buy-in amount. So what the industry has been pushing back on is levy of 28% GST on the entire buy-in amount. It's akin to taxing a bank on the deposit amount instead of the service provided by a bank. So that has been the argument of the industry. I can see already that there is some disagreement. And on your question on why the sacking has happened already, one more issue with the amendments to the law is that it has been said that the tax will be applied retrospectively. Now, they have said that this is just a clarificatory tax in nature and it doesn't create a new tax liability. However, both under the erstwhile service tax regime as well as under a pre-amended GST law, the industry was paying 18% GST on just the service tax component, which was recently confirmed by the Karnataka High Court, right? I know there's an appeal pending, but Karnataka High Court has already approved that. So in fact, it does amount to creating a fresh tax liability. And the industry is very apprehensive because the valuation rules are not out yet and the tax is going to be imposed on October 1st. So we as lawyers are, having to deal with a lot of industry anxiety. And the government has, introduced the IT rules in a way to encourage the growth of this industry. As, you correctly pointed out, it is a big contributor, big pillar of the Indian economy now, right? So, when there is a policy intent to support this industry, then the tax policy also should complement the regulatory policy.
Okay, so just picking up on your point of the game of skill is constitutionally protected. Does the Constitution also determine the rate of tax on game of skill and protect it?
No,
It does not. Okay, so when you say that game of skill should have 28% or not, obviously there is a merit argument that, okay, no, so matlab, there is more merit in skill and it does this so it give it a lower tax rate. It is not a judicial question, it's a question, that's a taxation question, right? Now let's look at a merit good. This conference, for example, we are certainly doing something more useful than gaming, I would reckon. This discussion, this law, public policy, all that is being discussed. So it is adding far more to the intellectual or knowledge body of the country than, let's say, Ludo. But the input credit for tea and coffee that I serve you in this conference on GST is not available to me. Why should it not be available to me? I'd say tax gaming, give me the input credit. So it would be actually fighting with other industries who think that we are actually even more merit-based than a game of skill. For example, I travel on business, I travel in a hotel. Why do I pay 28%? So there would be a lot of tax slab 28% industries who have far more merit to my mind or to the public mind or the policy mind than a game of skill. or should all skill-based professions have a lower income tax than non-skill-based professions? Let's take the argument further. So with that, I'll bring in Pinky ji. Does Constitution protect rates of tax?
No. You can do what rate of taxation you want. Ultimately, it's for the government to decide as a matter of policy. Taxation is not subject matter of proportionality and subject matter of judicial review. Yes, retrospectively, as she was saying, yes, normally taxes are not retrospective. Let's put it very clearly. I mean, once in a blue moon they are. But general law is that any offense which happens should be from the date that it has started rather than to go backwards unless it is that of procedure. So tax should be prospective, but the rate of taxation is actually a matter of finance and is a matter of state and government policy. So therefore, you're right. I mean, what tax should be imposed, let's say on a conference call that is made or a business call that is made, that is based upon the evaluation by the council. But what is important is one that Ashwini ji was also talking, there should be a consultative process at least as much as possible. Secondly, one should balance the interest of business if it is business. So that is the key question. What do we want as a state or as a government or as a country to allow or disallow or to allow in a limited way? That is where the entire discussion happens. But taxation is not amenable and the rate of taxation to judicial review.
So with that I come to a question to Mr. Ashwini Mahajan. Ashwini ji, जैसा पिंकी जी ने कहा कि अगर ये गैम्बलिंग है तो ये स्टेट का सब्जेक्ट है, टेक्नोलॉजी है तो सेंटर का सब्जेक्ट है, बट आप मुझे एक बात बताएं कि सेंटर के अंदर टेक्नोलॉजी क्या एक विभाग का सब्जेक्ट है? अब जैसे हमारे पास कोर्ट्स में कंप्यूटर लगे, ई कोर्ट्स, तो सारा डिजिटल कोर्ट हो गया, वो कोविड में डिजिटल कोर्ट हुआ, तो जुडिशरी क्या अब मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ आईटी को देखनी चाहिए कि मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ आईटी का काम सिर्फ स्टैंडर्ड सेट करना है कि भाई एक जुडिशियल सिस्टम इलाहाबाद हाई कोर्ट का है, एक कलकत्ता हाई कोर्ट का है, तो आपस में वो बातचीत कर पाएँ, या फिर पंचायती राज हो गया या अर्बन डेवलपमेंट हो गया। अब डिजिटलाइजेशन तो यूनिवर्सल है, तो ये सारे विभाग बंद करके क्या एक विभाग मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ आईटी को खोल देना चाहिए?
मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ आईटी, इसको माईटी बोलते हैं, उसका काम आईटी से और डिजिटलाइजेशन से और इन सब इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स से जुड़े हुए जो बिजनेसेस हैं उनको फैसिलिटेट करने का है, इससे ज़्यादा कोई उनका काम नहीं है।
तो मतलब किसी और विभाग को वो टेक ओवर नहीं कर सकते,
उनको फैसिलिटेट करने का काम है।
तो ये फिर गेमिंग और गैम्बलिंग को टेक ओवर होने का प्रयास निरंतर क्यों होता है?
इस पर मैं कोई कमेंट नहीं देना चाहता।
थोड़ा मलाईदार विभाग है,
क्योंकि जो अभी पिंकी जी और जो अभी आपके माध्यम से विषय आया कि टैक्सेशन के बारे में, रेट ऑफ टैक्स के बारे में मैं बताता हूँ। तो जो रेट ऑफ टैक्स की बात है, आपने उसके प्लेटफॉर्म वर्सेस उसकी बात की। जो रेट ऑफ टैक्स की बात है, मैं आपको एक इंसिडेंट बताना चाहता हूँ। हम लोग जीएसटी लागू करने के खिलाफ थे शुरुआती दौर में, तो वो विषय उस समय आया कि कांग्रेस पार्टी की मांग थी कि जीएसटी में हाईएस्ट रेट को डिफाइन किया जाए, 18% से ऊपर या वट एवर रेट इज़ देयर, दैट हैज़ टू बी डिफाइंड। तो उस समय ये बात रूलिंग पार्टी में और ऑपोजिशन में इस पर बहुत चर्चा चल रही थी। मैं उस चर्चा का हिस्सा था किसी न किसी कारण से। तो ये बात आई कि हम किसी भी हालत में अपने जीएसटी बिल में, जीएसटी एक्ट में हाईएस्ट रेट डिफाइन नहीं करेंगे। दिस शुड बी लेफ्ट टू द जीएसटी काउंसिल टू डिसाइड अबाउट द रेट्स, एंड देयरफॉर saying that this rate is bad, this rate is good is not correct. Whatever GST, and this decision has not been taken overnight. For taking this decision, it has taken more than 1.5 years of discussion. So ये जो निर्णय है, मैं समझता हूँ कि ये रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन का निर्णय नहीं है। जिस प्रकार से हम सिगरेट और शराब पर टैक्स लगा करके रेवेन्यू मैक्सिमाइज करने की कोशिश करते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है। वहाँ भी हम मैक्सिमाइज़ करने की कोशिश नहीं करते, यहाँ भी हम चाहते हैं, यानी जो अलग अलग स्रोतों से अलग अलग ऑफिशियल्स ने इसके बारे में बयान दिए हैं, उन्होंने यही कहा है, रेवेन्यू मैक्सिमाइजेशन हमारा उद्देश्य नहीं है, हमारा उद्देश्य है कि इस डीमेरिट को हम कैसे मिनिमाइज़ कर सकें, उसकी कोशिश है। और ये जो चतुरता है ना, मुझे लगता है इंडस्ट्री को भी इसके बारे में समझना चाहिए। ये चतुर तरीके से देश में बिजनेसेस नहीं चलाए जा सकते, यह समझने की बात है। आज भारत डिजिटलाइजेशन में, टेक्नोलॉजी में बहुत ऊपर जा रहा है। उसी टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग करके हम चंद्रयान बना सकते हैं, चंद्रमा पर पहुंच सकते हैं। उसी टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग करके हम ड्रोन्स बना सकते हैं, उसी टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग करके हम एआई बना सकते हैं, उसी टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग करके हम ऑटोमेशन कर सकते हैं, उसी टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग करके हम भारत को दुनिया का सबसे ज़्यादा वैभवशाली देश बना सकते हैं। इसलिए चॉइस करनी पड़ेगी। और जो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हैं, मैं यहाँ पर केवल विदेशी और स्वदेशी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ। इन्वेस्टमेंट शुड गो टू दोज एरियाज, टू दोज बिजनेसेस विच आर एडिंग वैल्यू टू द नेशन. Investment should not go to those, and in fact this is not just to desist people from playing those games. This is also to desist those funders, those investors to invest in those games, because these games are not going to be lucrative for those investments also. Therefore this decision of putting higher rate of tax is also to desist investors.
Okay, so before I come to Mr. Asthana, he wanted to get in a point on technology and jurisdictional issue. I recall an incident when, the National E-Governance Plan was being formed. I am also a Panchayati Raj activist, I support decentralization of power. And we were really arguing for computerization of Panchayati Raj institution. In fact, the entire work that has happened there has come out of SKOCH's own research and papers. And that was the time when this common services centers was being formed, and Ministry of IT wrote to Ministry of Panchayati Raj saying that the CSCs, common service centers, which are independent businessmen in the village, should be housed inside the Panchayat building. And since they have a computer and they're running a computerized business, it would deem that Panchayat has been computerized. And in the wisdom, the concerned Joint Secretary on Ministry of Panchayati Raj agreed. And I had to write a letter to Minister of Panchayati Raj, who was Mani Shankar Iyer then, that by having a tenant who has a computer does not make you computerized. Panchayats are a government. They have defined functions, functionaries and finances. That function is a sovereign function. It cannot be handed over to some businessman who's also selling recharge, who's also selling television cable, and is possibly, in the rent-seeking business for every government service that there is. That argument was accepted, and the National Mission on Panchayati Raj was formed. There was a committee of which I was a member, and that is how today we have almost 100% of Gram Panchayats in India computerized. Had it been considered a technology issue and left at the doorstep of Ministry of IT, then the entire third-tier power would have been usurped by business, which had no business to be in government. With that, over to Mr. Asthana on your view on jurisdictional issue, on why it is technology and why should it be the Ministry of IT.
Now, as the name suggests, this online gaming uses internet to provide the gaming activities. Okay? So if a crime is committed online, it is a cyber crime. Cyber crime is a borderless crime. So we should not think that only the state government should take action. Even the central government can take action. That is why I said that if the Public Gaming Act of 1867 is suitably amended to include online gambling as an offense and make it a deterrent offense, then the police has powers all over the country to investigate these online offenses and bring the culprits to the book more effectively.
So this act is under domain of which ministry currently? Who will change?
Public Gambling Act is a central act, 1867.
But it sits with some ministry or the other?
What?
It must be with Ministry of Home Affairs.
Ministry of Home Affairs, yes.
Right?
Yes.
So where does Ministry of IT come into this? And why should Ministry of Home Affairs be controlling gambling? Pinky?
See, this is what I was actually going to add. I think in the current scenario with new technology coming in, you are actually having an issue coming across various different departments and ministries. And it is impossible. In fact, MIT, as Ashwini ji was saying, MIT has a large number of issues in being able to handle, because by and large it is recommendatory. It comes into recommending action, but actually cannot take action. Then there is the answerability of intermediaries. In technology, people who provide services are not amenable to the Indian jurisdiction, if at all, or MIT. So really speaking, we have to devise a method somewhere between the ministries in terms of technology, gambling, offense, crime, because Home Affairs would be taking care of crime, whereas technology would come within technology, to actually set up either a separate ministry or a separate department which has the requisite skill set and the power and jurisdiction to be able to deal. But what Asthana ji said is actually very valid. What you need is a centralized system of classifying it into one category. Either if it is an offense, online gambling has to come somewhere as an offense. Otherwise, taxation is another element. Taxation is regulatory mechanisms providing a disincentive, maybe generating revenues also from an activity which is carried out. But ultimately, if the key test is games of chance, at least at the minimum, are to be banned and are to be considered gambling, then under the Central Act, you have to say online gambling is bad. And whichever way, either we put further qualifications. I mean, some of the suggestions I think even you have made are, for example, qualified skill. The same game played by some people may be a game of chance, the same game played by people may be a game of skill. Rummy and Flash, of course, are very kind of distinctive games, so they come in two different categories. But let us say tennis, hockey, cricket. So, you keep getting into these configurations.
Also like lawyers and consultants, and I am in a consulting business. Sometimes I give a very knowledge-based advice. Sometimes I am just guessing. So should there be a different tax of rate of service tax or GST on when I applied myself and when I just guessed?
No, you are right, but ultimately the game of chance and gambling is one category which will have to somewhere or the other come into being.
So, exactly. So Tanisha, coming to you, so one conclusion very clearly, there's no dispute, is that the rate of GST is decided by the GST Council and it's a finance issue. The second thing is decided is that if it's Gambling Act, then it's Ministry of Home Affairs. That's where the law sits. Why is it that industry wants to go to Ministry of IT for this? Are there friendlier territory, more forward-looking?
So here's my 2 cents on it. Just also, I think on the tax, right? I think the point is not on the rate of tax, but on the tax base, because the taxing the face value of the buy-in amount, right? The entire buy-in amount, that's the money that gets disbursed to the winners. The platform is not keeping that money by itself. So just thought I'd clarify that. On your question on why MeitY, right? So see, there have been some, right, as you have rightly said, betting and gambling is a state subject, right? So up until now, the states have been enacting laws. Some states have introduced licensing regimes for online gaming as well, like Nagaland, Sikkim, Meghalaya, although that law is repealed now. So it has been state regulated, state prohibited. There have been several challenges with it. First of all, a state law can't have extraterritorial applicability. There were a host of offshore gambling casino platforms which were illegally offering their platforms in India. And a lot of Indian money was going abroad to bet on those platforms in violation of our exchange control laws. So when you have that sort of activity, the best way to curb it is to block those platforms. currently under our IT rules, even our pre-amended rules, right? The ministry which is empowered to ask intermediaries like TSPs, ISPs to block those platforms is MeitY. And even in the past, MeitY has actually, there is a blacklist out there. MeitY has actually issued blocking orders to these intermediaries to block those offshore gambling platforms and curb those activities. So because of that, I feel the MeitY is, because it is the regulator for technology and these sorts of things.
No, I understand that, but does MeitY in this case replace Ministry of INB? Is censorship their job? They will only act on a complaint if some ministry and says, okay, now we will correspond and we'll say, stop this. Right? I'll give you other examples. You have a national digital health mission. Your entire COVID campaign has been done digitally on your COVID app. Does health sit with Ministry of IT therefore? You have e-courts, digital courts. So does judiciary sit in Ministry of IT therefore? So by merely adding the word digital or e or online, does that domain function automatically transfer to Ministry of IT? And that chaturtha, why is it being done? By the industry. And no one seems to be demurring. And everyone seems to be very comfortable with the fact, no, online gaming is MeitY, but online health is health and family welfare.
मुझे लगता है कि कई बार जो मिनिस्ट्रीज़ होती हैं उनके बारे में क्योंकि भारत के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में और बिजनेसेस के संदर्भ में गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया रूल्स में अलग अलग मंत्रालयों के लिए अलग अलग कार्य सौंपे गए हैं। तो जब भी कोई नई चीज़ आती है तो उसके बारे में ये तलाश तो होती है कि भी कौन से मंत्रालय में इसको जाना चाहिए, लेकिन यह उसके नेचर पर निर्भर करता है कि किस डिपार्टमेंट में उसको भेजा जाए। जहाँ तक ऑनलाइन की बात है तो हम सब लोग जानते हैं कि ऑनलाइन जो साइट्स हैं, गेमिंग की नहीं, ई कॉमर्स साइट्स हैं, वो सारी कॉमर्स मिनिस्ट्री के तहत आती हैं, स्वाभाविक है। उसी प्रकार से जो डी ट्रांसफ़र्स हैं वो भी ऑनलाइन हैं, वो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस के अंतर्गत आती हैं। अलग अलग विभागों के संदर्भ में अलग अलग विभाग हैं, तो विभाग किस लिए बनाए गए हैं? अगर सारा कुछ अब हम ऑनलाइन होने जा रहा है, चाहे वो बिजनेसेस हैं, चाहे वो सरकारी कामकाज है, वो ऑनलाइन होने जा रहा है, तो वो सारा MeitY और एक मंत्री तो उसको नहीं देख सकता है। तो इसलिए स्वाभाविक तौर पर एक फैसिलिटेटर का काम करता है MeitY, और मुझे लगता है कि MeitY को भी अपने अधिकार क्षेत्र का पता होना चाहिए, और पता है। और जहाँ तक ये जो क्राइम्स और कौन इसको डील करेगा, ये सारी बातें आती हैं, ये तो जो ऑनलाइन गेमिंग साइट्स पर जो क्राइम्स होते हैं वो तो ठीक है, लेकिन जो ऑनलाइन गेमिंग बनाने वाले लोग हैं वो जो क्राइम करते हैं उसको कौन देखेगा?
SRO देखेगा उसको, सेल्फ रेगुलेटरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन होगी, वो सारे पंचायत डालेंगे।
मुझे लगता है कि ये जो सेल्फ रेगुलेशन वाला जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, ये वहीं धराशायी हो गया जहां चंद्रू कमेटी ने इसके बारे में लिखा कि देयर आर चांसेस ऑफ मैनिपुलेशंस इन द ऑनलाइन गेमिंग साइट्स। और ये तो लिखा ही हुआ है, उसमें कोई मैं अपनी तरफ से कह रहा हूँ ऐसा तो है नहीं। तो इसलिए रेगुलेशन होना चाहिए, ये भी ज़रूरी है, लेकिन रेगुलेशन करने के लिए सरकार के पास कैपेसिटी होनी चाहिए, ये भी ज़रूरी है। तो इसलिए एक तरफ तो हम ऐसी गेम्स को प्रमोट करते हुए चले जाएं, उसके लिए अलग से अपने बजट में से प्रावधान करके उनकी पॉलिसिंग करें। बेहतर यही है कि उसके आसान तरीके खोजे जाएं। जैसे मैंने 2 सुझावों के संदर्भ में कहा, एक कैप लगाया जाए। क्या तकलीफ़ है कैप लगाने में? अगर आप गेमिंग के बारे में इतने बढ़िया मानते हैं कि गेमिंग से लोगों को बड़ा अच्छा लगता है, मनोरंजन होता है, तो कैप लगा दीजिए ना। कैप के बारे में इंडस्ट्री क्यों मना करती है? अगर और दूसरा, जो प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर जो लोग आते हैं और उस पर वो पैसा लगाते हैं, उस पर जीएसटी क्यों लगना चाहिए? प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर सब लोग अपना सामान बेचते हैं, उस पर जीएसटी लगता है ना। वहाँ कहाँ ऐसा है कि भाई जो प्लेटफॉर्म की जो फीस है उसी पर जीएसटी लगेगा? जीएसटी तो हर खरीदे बेचे जाने वाले साजो सामान पर, सर्विसेज पर लगता है ना। तो यहाँ भी लगता है।
Ashwini ji, now since the time is up, we need to very quickly come to conclusions. So anyone can disagree, but I'm just trying to create a broad consensus. So one broad consensus is that we may or may not like the industry, but we like the tax. So there is no dispute on that, right? The second is that if a tax has to be reviewed, the better thing to review is perhaps there should be a cap on the stakes that you can play or allow on gaming. So you can review what should be the cap. You agree with that? Okay. Then we come to the jurisdictional issue. Everyone is very clear that gambling is a state subject, and if it's a gaming act or gambling act, then Ministry of Home Affairs is the custodian of that law. So the domain is Ministry of Law, and Ministry of IT is a technology enabler. So between the domain and whatever support, technology support that they need from Ministry of IT, perhaps between the two ministries they need to figure out. But I don't think that the function of law keeping or law making on gaming and gambling is being handed over to Ministry of IT by Ministry of Home Affairs. Because if you pose this question to Ministry of Home Affairs, they may very violently disagree. So there is no dispute on this fact. Okay. Then we come to the issue of skill and chance. Now I would say skill and chance is more of an academic question because you can keep debating. There is no constitutional protection or there is no protection of law on rate of tax on either of the two. GST Council is well within their rights to tax them exactly the same. And if there is a merit in putting lower rate of tax on a game of skill, then I would say I'd be the first one standing in the queue. He's serving some samosas or paneer tikka or something, and he's charging me 28% GST. I am not getting input credit. Now, I am not eating all of that. And it is in accordance, if you have a conference which falls over lunchtime and meal times, you have to give people. It's an essential business input. Then my right to get input credit on food far outweighs a game of skill chance of getting, lower tax rate. Last but not the least, I think there is agreement that self-regulation is not the best policy. There has to be some regulation. Some ministry has to stand up and say, this is the law. Please follow it. So this is what this interesting discussion has concluded. We haven't had any audience questions, so we can have one if anyone has, if there is any disagreement with what I've said. Anyone wants to say anything? Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, sir. So, India is the second largest gaming country in the world. First is China. And gaming, as per se, is not just gambling. You have multiple skill gaming called Counter-Strike and COD and all of that. For that, you have international tournaments and countries participate and countries promote it. What do you have to say about that? Apart from gambling, there's a very big sphere of gaming as an industry, and it can provide a lot of jobs to people, especially engineers, because India has a lot of engineers, because they create it and they do it. So when you have something, when you're creating a regime which is focused on gaming, so there has to be a difference between gambling and gaming as skilled.
So I said that's an academic question. My point is the end result is betting. So if there is job generation and skill development, I agree, or then it's education business. As long as there is no real money betting, I have no problem with game of skills being at 18%. आप महाभारत का गेम बनाइए, आप रामायण का गेम बनाइए, आप रावण को मारिए, आप जो मर्जी कीजिए, उस पर जुआ तो आप खेल सकते. तो गेम का कंटेंट क्या है, स्किल लेवल कंटेंट इज अ नॉन इशू। बिजनेस एक्टिविटी क्या है? बिजनेस एक्टिविटी है बेटिंग। वो बेटिंग अब गैम्बलिंग वाली है कि स्किल वाली है मुझे नहीं पता। मैंने बताया ना, मैं कंसल्टेंट हूँ। आपने चलते फिरते बगैर पैसे के मेरी एडवाइस मांग ली तो मैं तुक्का लगा दूंगा, वो छोटा बिल भेजूंगा। आपने पढ़ लिख के मेरी एडवाइस मांगी तो मैं बड़ा बिल भेजूंगा, तो वो गेम ऑफ स्किल है। तो मेरा इनकम टैक्स फ़र्क है क्या दोनों में? ये तो फिर कोर्ट्स कुछ और काम ही नहीं करेंगे सिवाय डिसाइड करने के स्किल क्या है और चांस क्या है। अब इस पर भी एक नई चीज़ चल रही है, वो कहते हैं हम एक बेंचमार्क बना देंगे, हम एक सॉफ्टवेयर बना देंगे, उसको आप गेम पे चलाइए, वो सॉफ्टवेयर बताएगी कि स्किल है कि चांस है। तो आप मुझे ये बताइए सॉफ्टवेयर कौन बनाएगा, उस मापदंड को कौन एक्सेप्ट करेगा? हमने तो आज तक जितने बेंचमार्क देखे हैं यहाँ पे बनते हुए, वो सारे एक टेक्नोलॉजी को फेवर करते हैं, दूसरी को फेल करते हैं। तो कौन सी टेक्नोलॉजी पास होगी, कौन सी फेल होगी, इसकी जवाबदेही किसकी है? तो देयर आर लॉट ऑफ related issues. Anybody else wants to take that question? So, okay.
Maybe I'll just add quickly, right? On your question of the distinction between games, so you're right, there is a big esports industry, for example. There is a big casual gaming industry, many of which are free to play, so it doesn't involve wagering at all. And those industries are thriving in India. On the classification of games, right, under the IT rules, there is a mechanism for games to get verified as permissible online real money games. So that that regulator looking at a game and blessing it, that function is there under the law currently to distinguish between prohibited gambling and permissible games.
ये बात बार बार आती है कि आप गेमिंग पर टैक्स लगा देंगे तो इससे बिजनेस प्रभावित होगा, सो कॉल्ड गेमिंग इंडस्ट्री जो है वो प्रभावित हो जाएगी, इतने हज़ारों लोग उसमें लगे हुए हैं। यहाँ पर देश और समाज को, हम सब लोगों को, आज यहाँ सब लोग जो बैठे हैं उनको भी और जो यहाँ नहीं सुन रहे हैं उनको भी ये विचार करना पड़ेगा कि हमें रोज़गार बनाने हैं, लेकिन रोज़गार कहाँ बने, किस क्षेत्र में बने, ये महत्वपूर्ण है। रोज़गार स्पेस टेक्नोलॉजी में बने, हम दुनिया भर के देशों के स्पेस क्राफ्ट्स को अंतरिक्ष की कक्षा में स्थापित करने वाले बने, ऐसा होना चाहिए। क्या हम ड्रोन्स बनाने वाले कामों में हम रोज़गार खड़े करें? क्या हम जो वैल्यू एडिशन करने वाले, अभी पिंकी जी ने भी इस विषय पर कहा कि वैल्यू एडिशन कितनी हो रही है देश और समाज के लिए, उसके बारे में विचार करें। केवल रोज़गार शब्द जो आने से उससे इनका समाधान नहीं होता है कि हमें गेमिंग इंडस्ट्री को उसी प्रकार से चलते रहना देना चाहिए जैसा कि चल रही है।
देखिए, कैनबिस में भी बहुत बड़ी इंडस्ट्री है दुनिया में, और भांग तो इंडिया में इजाड हुई थी, भोले बाबा पीते थे, तो वो भी कर दीजिए लीगलाइज, सबको सब बम भोले करें। So with that, I think we come to the end of this panel. We have a group picture, and after that we'll move again to the award section. And we know we are hopelessly intruding into the lunch time, so appropriate beverages are being served so that you don't miss the lunch. And the food is being served as well. So
Thank
we'll
you
come
so much,
forward
sir.
for a group photo. Is that what
Yeah,
is?
I request you to kindly gather for a group photograph. Thank you so much, Dr. Ashwini Mahajan, Dr. Pinky Anand, Mr. Rakesh Asthana ji, and Ms. Tanisha Khanna. At the same time, Sameer Kochar sir, for enlightening us with this wonderful discussion, panel discussion. Thank you so much once again. आप सभी का हम पुनः धन्यवाद करते हैं। आपके समक्ष एक और डांस परफॉर्मेंस हम लेकर आ रहे हैं और इसके बाद हम हमारे गवर्नेंस अवार्ड्स की ओर अग्रसर होंगे। Ladies and gentlemen, now we are presenting another wonderful Nazrana in the form of Kathak dance in front of you.